Lyndon Johnson always used to say this when he got a great introduction. He said, "I wish my mother were alive to hear it, and my father might have believed it." So thank you very much. It is a great honor to be here. But really, at the end of the day, I am standing in front of you as somebody that was very fortunate and blessed. I started my career as a kid in the great state of New Jersey. I was watching TV one day and I saw this guy on television who had a big nose, olive skin, and he looked like he belonged at all my family dinners. And I said, I want to be just like that guy. And I just followed that path to try to be like him. And fortunately, I got on a train that had a lot of incredible, great people. So everything I talk about today is stolen. It's all plagiarized, right? I wrote 2 books, Football Done Right, which is the last book about the history of the NFL, and Gridiron Genius, which is about Bill Belichick, Bill Walsh, and Al Davis, who I've been blessed to work for. So part of that is really something that's unique. I was really honored to be Bill Walsh's driver. That's how I started my career. I started my career in a Porsche, driving Bill Walsh around. And he used to tell me all the time, if we're all thinking alike, no one's thinking. And so one day he asked me a question. He said, have you ever heard of Tom Peters? And I thought to myself, wait a minute, is this a trick question? Is this the punter from North Dakota, or is this somebody I don't know about, right? And I said, Coach, I don't know who that is. He said, well, he just wrote a book called In Search of Excellence with Bob Woodman. He said, go to the Stanford bookstore, no Amazon, no delivery of it. Go to the bookstore and go buy that book, and because you are basically in the leadership position, and you've got to learn leadership, right? You've got to learn how to make 1 + 1 = 3. It was Walsh's big thing. How do we make 1 + 1 = 3? Because that's magic. That's how you get people inspired to do their jobs, right? People that love what they do a better job than people that just grind at 9 to 5. When they look at their clocks, I want to get out of here. The Army had this problem. The Air Force developed the F-105. The F-105 was supposed to be the greatest airplane in the history of Air Force aviation. It could fly the farthest, drop heavy bombs, and fly at unique speed. The problem was it couldn't do all 3 things at the same time. The pilots that flew it called it the dud because they got killed in it. They had to jump out. So how do we make 1 + 1 = 3? And it really starts with the thing that calls about leadership. And it calls really about how are we all in? So what's the Glenn Dorsey Orchestra have anything to do with football? Absolutely nothing, but they're all in. It's a true story. Jerry Seinfeld tells this story to every single comedian that starts out. I tell it to everybody that works at North Carolina. The Glenn Dorsey Orchestra is flying to an event in Iowa. It's snowing. The plane can't land at the airport. They've got one decision to make. Do we land in the cornfield? It's the only chance for their survival. They decide to do it. They land. Thankfully, everybody's safe. They get out. They're dressed in all this wonderful clothes, tuxedos. They got to get to their gig. They get out. They get through the snow and they see a house up on the hill. Let's go to that house. Let's call somebody up at the house, see if we get a bunch of cabs and we'll take us to the event. This is drudgery, right? So they go up to the house and they look inside the window before they knock on the door and they see this incredible family sitting around a table. Wife, husband, 2 kids, celebrating dinner. Really the true family American thing. The bass player looks at the drummer and says, how do people live like that? Because he couldn't comprehend living in that world. Because he was all in for the Glenn Dorsey Orchestra. He saw only that. And that's how you survive. Al Davis used to tell me all the time, kid, you can't work in the NFL. You got to live in the NFL. You got to be part of your life. Now you say, well, how do I get people to do that? Well, you got to make 1 + 1 = 3. You've got to make it so that they want to come to work. You got to make it, and it starts with everybody in this room. It starts with leadership. It starts with 5 elements, right? 5 elements that have to come together on everything. You've got to teach your people the difference between loyalty and devotion. You've got to teach them between accountability and responsibility, and you've got to make them all understand what alignment is. Right? Those are the 5 things, and if you don't explain to the people, you're never going to make 1 + 1 = 3. Loyalty and devotion. What's the difference between the 2? You tell everybody that works for you, you want them to be loyal to you. But do you know what the difference between loyalty and devotion is? That's Muhammad Ali fighting Joe Frazier. Muhammad Ali had a guy in his corner named Bundy Brown. Bundy Brown was not his trainer, Bundy Brown was his guy. He would say, Muhammad, you're the greatest, you're the greatest, you're the greatest. Right? But when Muhammad didn't work out, or Muhammad didn't run the miles, Bundy Brown still called him the greatest. Bundy Brown was devoted to Muhammad. He told him what he wanted to hear. Angelo Dundee was loyal to Muhammad when he told him to get off his ass and go out there and start training. You want people loyal to you, you got to get them to tell you the truth. You may not want to hear it, but you got to get them to tell you the truth. Tell them the difference between loyalty and devotion. What is loyalty? Loyalty is telling me the truth. Devotion is telling me what I want to hear. You run a company that tells you what you want to hear, you know what's going to happen? You're going to fall behind. For me and my job in North Carolina, I don't want anybody to tell me I'm doing great. I want everybody to tell me I'm doing bad. Remember what Walsh said, if we're all thinking alike, no one's thinking. Accountability versus responsibility. So when I worked at the Niners, Walsh was really about a lot of things about leadership that he learned from Tom Peters and Peter Drucker, and all the great leaders, Warren Bettis. But this was his big one, accountability versus responsibility. Right? When you're accountable, you look at the pictures on the wall and you say, well, somebody's going to tell me when they're crooked. Walsh would tell us all the time, when you're walking down the hall and if you see a picture like the one in the corner that's crooked, I don't need to tell you to fix it. You should be responsible enough to fix it. That's your responsibility. It's not your accountability, it's your responsibility. The difference there is you do it because you understand it. I tell everybody, I need people that are responsible. What's your goal? What you do? I don't need to tell you what to do because I'm not around you all the time. The difference between accountability and responsibility. Responsibility, you take ownership. That's how you make 1 + 1 = 3. Alignment and out of alignment. We hear this all the time, right? You're going to hear this all the time. North Carolina, we're in complete alignment, right? We lose the first game against TCU. You know what's going to happen? Everybody's going to think they're out of alignment. Oh, hold on now, that's not fair. Go Frogs! What did he say?
Go Frogs!
Go Frogs. Right? When you're aligned, you understand it's a process. This guy understands it better than anybody. Pat Riley, the head of the Miami Heat. One day, all his great players, the great LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, come up to his office. This is a true story. And they say to him, we don't like Eric Spoelstra. We just can't play for the guy. The guy's too demanding. He's working us too hard, yada, yada, yada. And so Riley listens, and he says, tell you what I'm going to do. I want everybody downstairs in the gym. I want you lined up against the wall. I'll come down and I'll handle this. He comes down to the gym. He says, everybody up against the wall. They line up against the wall. And he says, in no uncertain terms, Eric Spoelstra will be the head coach of this basketball team today, tomorrow, and the next day. That's alignment. From the top down. That's alignment. As leaders, you've got to be able to support the people that work for you. You've got to be in alignment. You can't let them flounder. You can't let them hold out. Because what often happens to any team, is there's always going to be somebody trying to divide you. There's always going to be somebody trying to divide you. And I'll talk about that later. Creating a culture starts with a story. And the storyteller must tell the story of us. This is what we believe in. Because we can't win without us. You know what the greatest hunting animal in the African safari is? It's not the lion, it's not the tiger, it's not the elephant. It's the African wild dog. The African wild dog has the most success rate of any animal in the jungle. Why? Because they operate as a team. They're one of the only animals that don't fight amongst themselves. They communicate excessively. They hunt in packs, 30 of them. But it's us, not them. And you know what happens when they're sick? They take food back from their kill to the sick. You know what happens when they get old? They take food back to that. You know who protects the young? The pack. That's called a team. That's us. We may not all look alike in this room, but we all belong together. That's really the story we have to tell players in North Carolina. You come from different backgrounds. We have Samoans, we have Polynesian, we have African American whites, we have people from all different cultures, Australia. We all have to work together because us is a more powerful story than them. There's a great book by Owen Eastwood called A Sense of Belonging. Whakapā is a sense of belonging. You will not be judged by money or celebrity, you'll be judged by what you do for the team. That's how you make 1 + 1 = 3. No one's bigger than a team. Tom Brady, at every single meeting, sat in the front row, over to the right. When he didn't do anything right, you know what happened? Belichick would tell him, boy, we can't even complete a goddamn pass. We look like crap. Brady took coaching because he belonged to the team. He wanted to be coached. It's a spiritual challenge, right? We've got to create something that creates 1 + 1. We've got to create a spiritual challenge which becomes an emotional communion. We're all in this together. We are all in this together. The African Wild Dogs are all in it together. They all understand their roles. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody accepts their role, and we go from there. Creating a sense of belonging or a need for a shared purpose. That's how we do it. So how do we do that, right? Well, we have to honor those who come before us. All right, I go into North Carolina. There's 3 players in the North Carolina Hall of Fame. 3 players, right, in the North Carolina that played football at North Carolina that are now in the NFL Hall of Fame. Easy. Lawrence Taylor's 1, right? Number 2, Julius Peppers. Anybody know who number 3 is? You'll never get it. Not a chance in hell you'll get it, right? You know why? Because University of North Carolina never honors their past. They never take care of their past. Guy's name is Chris Hamburger. He played for the Washington Redskins. You don't honor the people that came before you, you're never going to create a sense of culture. You're never going to create a sense of 1 + 1 = 3. The alumni, people that work for you, you got to honor them. Put their name on a wall. They come before them. When you go to the Air Force Academy, they have a wall there of all the cadets that have gone before. And they make the cadets understand who's on that wall. Like, we just didn't get here. This uniform just didn't show up. Somebody, blood, sweat, and tears went into that. We got to have some kind of traditions too, right? Why do we got to honor them before us before we get there? What are our traditions? We don't have any in North Carolina. It's a sad part of our program. We have 0 traditions. You go to the University of Alabama, they're going to have all their traditions, right? They got the red elephants in every single county. We don't have any. We have to create our own traditions. You have to create your traditions. Whether it's your Christmas party, whether it's your outing, whatever it is, you have to create traditions. When you go in the Patriots building, when Belichick was there, now I don't know what it's like anymore because they got rid of everything that says Belichick in New England because the owner's still fighting about who had credit. For some reason, he thinks he coached the team. But the reality of it is these would be on the wall. Kids would come in. Belichick would say, have you noticed anybody in the kitchen? They have no idea. Who's number 76 in the kitchen? No clue. So then he tells them, that's Bucko Kilroy, Northeast Philadelphia. Played at Temple. Went on to play with all-decade player in the 40s. Invented the grading system that we use today. Explains the history to them. Then you start to know who 40 is, Michael Haynes. Then you start to know who 78 is, Bruce Armstrong. They all have to know them. Like, understand your history creates 1 + 1 = 3. Why do we all watch the Masters? I don't even like golf when I watch the Masters. Because of the traditions. Because they honor the people from the past. They believe in something bigger than themselves, right? That's what they do. They believe in something bigger than themselves. So culture is the game. Tim just asked me, how do you do? My man back there thinks we're going to lose to TCU. Does it really matter? No, because culture is the game. We're building something bigger than ourselves, right? We're going to build a culture first before we start talking about winning games. You're going to have to build a culture first before you start worrying about how much money you're going to make, right? Patriot culture. We walked in. There was one building when you walked in. There was one sign when you walked in. There was nothing about Giselle. There was nothing about Tom Brady. There was nothing about Belichick. There was no Super Bowl trophies on the wall. There was just this. Do your job. Be attentive. Speak for yourself. And put the team first. That's who we are. That's who we are at North Carolina. That's what we're going to be. Always. Whether we win the first game, lose the first game, whatever we do, that's who we are. Do you know who you are? That's the key. Who are you? Right? What's your job as a leader? Somebody asks you what a leader is. What? You push people when they go slow. You calm them when they go too fast. You reassure them when they lose faith. You inspire them when they lose enthusiasm. Most importantly, you stand behind them when they have success. And when something goes wrong, you stand in front of them. Right? Don't take credit for something you didn't do. You lead them. They take the credit. So, When I was in that car with Coach Walsh, he told me to go get that book. I did. I set myself out on a leadership journey. And one day after the team was in Cleveland, the owner moved the team from Cleveland to Baltimore. Belichick and I didn't make the move. So I went back to New Jersey. I lived in my beach house, and I got a phone call from the president of the Los Angeles Rams, who was now in St. Louis. And he said to me, I want you to write up a book. I don't want it tomorrow. I want it like 2 months from now. I want you to write a book about what makes a great coach in the NFL. I want you to study the great coaches, the great leaders in the NFL. Write that book up, present that book to me with recommendations on who fits the criteria. Good, great, thank you, John. I appreciate it. John Shaw was the man's name. He said, I'll pay you for it. You just go ahead and start doing it. So I went ahead. So I went to Peters, and I went to Venice, and I went to all the great leaders, Peter Drucker, Charlie Munger, all of them, right? And I came up with what is the essence of leadership. I just showed you a slide about what leaders do, but what is a leader? Does anybody know what a leader really does? What makes a great leader? First thing a great leader has is command of the room. Command of the room. What does that mean? He walks in, he's got a plan. Chick-fil-A, they got a plan. They're going to sell chicken sandwiches. That's their plan, right? That's who they are. The main thing is to keep the main thing. They don't try to do 5 different things. They do one thing really well. We walk into a football team in North Carolina. We are going to be a smart, tough, dependable team. That's who we are, who can play in any kind of weather. 1991, Bill Belichick walks into the Cleveland Brown facility on 1st Avenue in Berea, Ohio. He hands me a piece of paper. When he goes into the Hall of Fame, I'm going to give the Hall of Fame that piece of paper. On that paper, it says, we are building a big, fast football team who's mentally and physically tough and can play in any kind of weather. That's who we are. That's command of the room. Who are you as a leader? What do you represent as a leader? It's really not complicated. You just write it down. And people say focus. Jobs says it perfectly. Focus isn't about just focusing on one. Focus is about eliminating all the distractions. That's not who we are. People are going to come to you as the leader and say, we should do this. We should do that. When I was a kid, my uncle Fred, who just passed away at 98 years old, used to take me out, and we'd stop at a diner. And he would say to me all the time, he'd say, kid, just order the burger. They can't cook it all good here. Well, in Jersey, we had diners, right? You ever see a diner menu in New Jersey? They had 8,000 things on it. They can't cook them all good, right? Leadership, command of the room. Second area of leadership, command of attention. How do you explain the plan? How do you explain the plan? Right? How do you communicate? The wild dogs, they know how to communicate. They heel, they squeak, they communicate the plan on how they're going to attack. How do you communicate? How is your messaging to the players? Right? Albert Einstein has 5 levels of intelligence. 5. Here's 4 of them. Smart, intelligent, brilliant, genius. Does anybody have any idea what the highest level of intelligence is according to Albert Einstein? Simple. Great leaders make complicated simple. Make it simple. Don't make it so elaborate nobody understands what the hell we're doing. You can't get people to follow it if you can't explain the plan. The plan has to be simple. Here's where we're going, and here's how we're going to get there. Now here's where it gets sticky. Here's where it gets sticky. Command of trust. They got to trust you as a leader. They have to trust you as a leader. You've got to be consistent, you've got to be honest, and you have to have a level of ability to have confrontation. It's a hard thing to do. Some people don't like hard conversations. Some people don't. When I worked for the Raiders, I worked for a man by the name of Al Davis, one of the most eccentric human beings you've ever seen in your life. He ate the same thing every day. He wore this white outfit or this black outfit every single day. 10:30 in the morning, he would call me on the phone. He said, never would ever say hello. My first year I worked for him, he would have hung up, and I would still be on the phone for another 15 minutes because I didn't know the conversation was over. He would call me at 10:30 in the morning, and he'd say, kid, I got 3 things for you. And I'd say, yes, Mr. Davis, what do you have? He said, do you know that kid from USC? I'm playing Jeopardy at this point, right? Who is Ronnie Lott? Yeah. How big is Ronnie Lott? Ronnie Lott is 6'0", 215. He runs 4.63. If I told him I had to look it up, you know what he'd say to me? F, I could look it up. That's why I called you. You have to know it. But he hated change. So I had this sign behind my desk when he would come in at 11 o'clock at night and try to tell me what we needed to do. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. And you command of trust, you've got to be able to be adaptive to change. Right? You've got to be able to see the future a little bit. You've got to be able to say, hey, here's where this is going. Right? A and P didn't see it. A and P, maybe I'm the only oldest one in the room, but A and P used to be dominant in supermarkets, but they didn't go out to the suburbs, and the next thing you know, they're out of business. Command and trust, you have to have competitive stamina. Does anybody know what competitive stamina is? It's the hardest thing for anybody to judge. I've spent 35 years in the National Football League evaluating people for a living. The thing I can't get is who has competitive stamina. What is it? It's not 10,000 hours. It's not. We all work 10,000 hours. We all are proficient at what we do. Malcolm Gladwell stopped short. Yeah, we need 10,000 hours. Yeah, the Beatles need to go to Hamburg and they need to play music forever. But here's what happens when you do something repeatedly. You know what happens? You get bored. And it becomes easy for you to take off. You lose competitive stamina. Yesterday was the 50th anniversary of this album. This album changed my life. This album changed my life because Lombardi told me to go chase a dream. He told me to go chase it harder. Born to Run 50 years ago came out yesterday. Right? Now, I'm a huge Springsteen fan. I grew up right on Highway 9. The beach was in front of my house. Right? Everything he sang about spoke to me. But what he taught me something really important, powerful. I saw him in 1974 as a 15-year-old kid, and I heard him sing Born to Run. And I thought, wow, that's powerful. So I conned my wife into going to Italy to celebrate our 50th birthday under the disguise I wanted to sing Springsteen songs around other Italians. It didn't really work well because it rained the entire concert. But in 2013, he played Born to Run. It was the same way he played Born to Run in 1974. He has competitive stamina. He never got bored. He never got bored. He didn't get tired of the song. He didn't want to not play it. You go to any Springsteen concert, he's going to play Born to Run like it's the first time you've ever heard it. People say, well, that's easy. No, it's competitive stamina. How do we do it over and over and over again? That's the key. You know who can't figure out competitive stamina? The United States Navy. These are all the helmets in the quad. The United States Navy spends $500 million to test human beings, men and women, whether they can be part of BUD/S training. $500 million they spend on it. They put a class of 175 people in the class. You know how many they get at the end of the day? 30. You're all business people in this room. What's the return of investment on that? Crap, right? Horrible. What they can't figure out is who can do it every day. They'll tell you the man or woman who's first in line the first day never makes it. They will tell you the one who runs the fastest never makes it. They will tell you the best athlete never makes it. You know who makes it? The one who stays in the moment and goes from drill to drill. Competitive stamina. You as a leader have to have competitive stamina. You got to do it every single day. If they see you not doing it every day, you take a day off, you're going to lose the troops. You got to handle volume. You got to do it every day. Volume is what we do. The other thing we got to do with command and trust is, to the great Jackson Brown line, we forget about the losses and exaggerate the wins. What you always have to do to command trust is figure out why you won and why you lost. Right? That's the most important thing we have in our businesses. Why are we successful? Why aren't we successful? And we have to, what happens? We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest with ourselves about that. We have to be loyal to the conversation. Last area called command of self. 3 areas, command of self. Who are you? How's your behavior? Do you have different rules for everybody else? Right? So I am a product of 1970s television. I had really no interest in going to school. I used to pretend I was sick, so I would stay home and watch all the reruns on television. And one day I got to see I Love Lucy. and I don't, maybe I'm the oldest one in this room, but Lucy had an apartment in New York. Ricky was the band leader, and the scenes were always about 3 rooms: the living room, the kitchen, and maybe the bedroom. So one day the scene's in Lucy's in the bedroom, and she's playing around with the ring on her finger, and it slips off her finger and it falls on the ground. So naturally she crawls on the ground, starts looking for the ring. She can't find it. She can't find it. We go to commercial. Come back from commercial. We now see Lucy in the living room, crawling around in the living room looking for a ring. Ricky comes home. Hey Lucy, how are you? Walks in. What are you doing on the floor, Lucy? I'm looking for my wedding ring. She said, really? Well, where'd you lose it? She said, well, I lost it in the bedroom. Wait a minute, you lost it in the bedroom. Why are you looking here? She said, because the light's better out here. The light's better out here. When you command yourself, you can't take the path of least resistance. You have to take the hard part. You have to have confrontation. You can't look where it light's the best. You've got to be willing to take the path that's the hardest path. You're going to have hard conversations with people. You got to be honest, right? The other thing you can't do is let ego get in the way. When I first got started in the NFL, Walsh told me, ego's the enemy. It'll kill you. Ryan Holiday wrote the book, Ego is the Enemy. But to me, this is one of the greatest ego stories I've ever heard and will tell you in my life. If you learn anything from this presentation today, take this with you when you're talking about ego. McLean Stevenson. In 1970 television, I was telling Tim this, I wrote in Football Done Right, that television in the 70s was appointment television. You had to stay home. Monday night, you had to watch your shows. TV guide was next to your TV. You watched all of the shows you had. You had to sit there. MASH was a universal hit. CBS had all that they controlled Tuesday night because MASH was on. This is Colonel Henry Blake, who played McLean Stevenson, who played Colonel Henry Blake in MASH. 2 years he plays Colonel Henry Blake. His contract's up. Right? His contract's up. He wants a new deal. ABC thinks that he would make the greatest show of all. Let's have the McLean Stevenson show. So they're talking to him about this. So he goes to CBS. He wants to get paid exactly how much they're making there. They say, no way. He says, well, hell with it. I'm going to go make the McLean Stevenson show. You know what they did to him on MASH? They killed him. His plane leaving, they exploded. So he could never go back. So the fans would never let him go back. You know how long the McLean Stevenson show lasted on ABC? 6 weeks. Canceled. But the most powerful thing about that story is this. They asked McLean Stevenson, what happened? And he said it so well that you must remember. He said, I didn't realize America loved Henry Blake. They didn't love McLean Stevenson. Ego. Ego. It's the killer. It ain't you. It's us. It ain't you. It's us. This is the greatest coach of all time. Everybody see the movie Hoosiers? Everybody thinks it's a basketball movie, right? No. It's a movie about culture. It's had nothing to do with basketball. It uses basketball as the metaphor for what we're talking about. It uses basketball for what you deal with every single day. That's Coach Norman Dale. Comes to this small town in Indiana. He's going to coach the basketball team. Right? He's got a lot of good players on the team, but he has one great player. One great player. So he's got to practice the rule of 3. You know what the rule of 3 is? In your organization, at my team at North Carolina, there's 3 groups of people. 3 groups of people. Group 1, do anything you want them to do. You tell them to show up at 1 in the morning, you're going to do this. They show up, they're happy, they're there. They put 1 + 1 = 3, they're good. You got people in group 2 that are not sure. They're undecided. Then you got people in group 3, mostly the most talented people, but the hardest ones to get through to. So instinctively, what do you think you should do? Pay attention to group 3, correct? What does Norman Dale do? Norman Dale's best player says he don't want to play basketball. Everybody in the town went berserk. Everybody in the town wanted to fire Norman Dale. Why? Because he wouldn't go and tell Jimmy Chitwood to come back on the team. What did Norman Dale do? Norman Dale spent all his time coaching the people in group 1. He never cared about anybody else but group 1. And he let Jimmy Chitwood shoot baskets off to the side. He could care less about them. The rule of three is when you have three groups of people in your organization, you focus on the people that care the most. Because the people that are undecided are going to move into group one. And the people in group three become isolated. And you know what happens to them? They either quit or they get into group one like Jimmy Chitwood did. Remember, when Jimmy Chitwood came back, he said, I'm not coming back unless Dale's the coach. So how do you impact the culture, right? We know the 4 areas of leadership. 4 areas of leadership: command of attention, command of meaning, command of the room, command, self-trust, all those things. We know those 4 areas of leadership. How do you impact the culture? How do you impact the culture? Because if you don't impact the culture as a leader, how do we get anywhere? First area of impact the culture is, this is Tom, this is Bill Campbell. He was the basketball coach, it was a football coach at Columbia University. He was there for 6 years, he won 13 games. He thought he thought highly of his leadership skills as a coach. He arrogantly moved to California, got an office in Palo Alto, and started to coach people that were working in Silicon Valley. The people that founded Google wrote a book called The $1 Trillion Coach, because this man ended up coaching $1 trillion worth of inventory. Right? So one day, I am having lunch with the great George Raveling. George Raveling's my partner on the business called The Daily Coach, which is a newsletter we write out every single day about leadership. And George Raveling was the first African-American basketball coach at Iowa. He went to Washington State, and I'll share a powerful story about him at the end of my presentation. But he's this incredible man who reads a lot of books. He's been very instrumental in my life. So one day I'm having lunch with him in Los Angeles when I'm writing Gridiron Genius, and we both are reading this book. And you know what? You impact the culture because we all need coaches. Who are you relying on to help you? We all need a coach. I need a coach. You need a coach. The guys who founded Google needed a coach. Steve Jobs needed a coach. If they need coaches, we all do. Who are you relying on? How you impact the culture is your search for wisdom, your ability to want to go out and help yourself get coached. The other way you impact the culture is this. This is Vince Lombardi's office the day he left Green Bay. See those plaques on the wall? They're not for being the best coach. They're not for winning a Super Bowl. Those plaques on the wall when he was a teacher at Red Bank Catholic High School in New Jersey, right? He proudly put them up there because he taught people. You impact the culture when you take time to teach people. We just brought 25 students into our football program. They go to University of North Carolina. We want to teach them how to grade tape. We want to teach them how to make highlight tape. So we make my job easier. But when you teach people what you know, you impact the culture. Teachers impact culture. Are you teaching anybody to be a better player? Are you teaching anybody to be a better person? We also got to teach, and my man over there thinks TCU will lose, confidence without evidence, right? Football is a game about scoring. Football is a game about scoring. Who wins? Right? How do you develop confidence without evidence? Right? We lose confidence because we constantly look at the scoreboard. Right? You can't do that. You have to trust the process. We're process-driven. We're not score-driven. Walsh wrote the book, The Score Takes Care of Itself. Right? If we do the things we're talking about today, leadership, impacting culture, we will definitely, eventually come out to be winners. You got to believe that. You got to sell that. That's part of command of the room, command of meaning. You got to sell that program. You got to be able to be in service to the work more than the audience. This is Rick Rubin. He started a record company coming out of his dorm room at NYU. What are we serving? It's bigger than us, right? We believe in the process, right? When I was in San Francisco, Walsh told me to go to the airport and pick up this coach named Sherman Lewis, right? In 1985. Now, you know, today, all of us could just go and Google Sherman Lewis and look at his picture and know exactly who it is. Back in 1985, I had no clue. I had to go down. I went to the media guy and I'm looking around. Oh, I found Sherman. He's the running back coach. He was the defensive coordinator at Michigan State. There he is. Okay, I'll pick him up at the airport. Back in 85, you would pull up to San Francisco airport, park the Porsche, grab him, put him in the car, no problem. So he gets in my car and I'm saying, Sherman, you know, you were the defensive coordinator at Michigan State. He said, what are you going to interview for here? So I'm interviewing for the running back job. The running back job? Wait a minute, you're the defensive coordinator. Like, why? He said, I don't know. Coach Walsh called me on the phone and said he wanted to interview me for the running back job. So one day I'm driving Coach around, and I had enough nerve to ask him, like, why would we hire the guy who's the defense coordinator who's going to be the running back coach? This is the quote. The problem is never to get the new innovative thoughts into your mind, but to get the old ones out. He wanted to train people. He didn't want to retrain people. You want to train people to impact your culture. You want to train people to teach them who they are, right? How you train is what you get. You're going to invest time into it, right? And you've got to remind them, this is really important for our team. You never take advice from people you take criticism from, right? You would never take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. You can't listen to the noise, right? It may not impact your business, it impacts mine. Every day they go on Twitter. Every day they read something in there. None of it's true, but you got to teach them on that. Creative thinking is an original idea that has value, while divergent thinking looks for many ways to answer the problem. Bill Walsh devised the West Coast offense, right? He was in Cincinnati, I don't know why it's called the West Coast, because he devised it in Cincinnati, Ohio. It should be the Midwest offense, but it wasn't. But he had a creative idea. It was divergent in thought, not creative. Just like this story I'm going to tell you. Paramount, California. I know this isn't the police car there, but Paramount, California is a little suburb right in the middle of outside of Los Angeles. It sits right by the 105, the 5. All the major freeways in California kind of converge on Paramount, California. Paramount, California is famous for the Zamboni machine, the thing that goes around the ice arenas, and they invented that in that town. The Zamboni family was from Paramount. But the also distinction about Paramount is they are the leader in the most bank robberies of any city in the United States. Because of the freeways, bank robbers can walk in, go to this one certain bank, which is right near the freeway, rob it, get on the freeway, and guess what happens in LA? You can't find the car, its traffic is all over the place, you're in trouble. So what do? So what would you do? Well, we're going to hire a security guard, put him at the door. That doesn't work. We're going to put more plexiglass behind the wall. That don't work. We're going to put cameras in here. We'll put more cameras. That don't work. Right? One day, a young intern, after a robbery, had come in, just got done college. He said to the bank manager, I have an idea. The bank manager says, what is it? He says, you know, I have an apartment that's right next to an abandoned police car lot. It's got a bunch of broken down cars. He said, do you think if we put one of those broken down cars in front of the bank, it might deter people from robbing us? You know what happened? The bank never got robbed again. Bank never got robbed again. It went from being the FBI's top 10 list of bank robberies in the United States to never appearing again. One divergent thought. You impact the culture when you get people to think of divergent. How do we solve a problem in second order thinking? Second order thinking is, what happens if we do this? What happens? If we do this, then what? These clowns have no idea about second order thinking, right? Again, I told you I'm a product of 70s television. It is the Three Stooges. They're in a boat. We don't have any sound here, but the fish jumps into the boat, okay? So Curly's going to kill the fish. Uh-oh. Curly makes a hole in the boat. Now, he's in trouble. He's got a hole in the boat. Mo comes over to assess the problem, right? Mo sees that we've got this hole in the boat. What are we going to do with it here? All right. Mo's like, we got to get this water out of the boat. Of course, Larry takes unnecessary shots, so he starts letting the water out. Curly, not second order thinking here, decides that that's a water letter outer. So Curly's going to let the water out from the one hole to the other hole. Now, we all laugh, right? How many of us have made the problem worse? How many of us have made the problem by solving the problem with a bad solution? You know why we do that? We don't second order think. We don't ask ourselves, if we do this, then what? Curly did. Curly's going to take a beating on it. We can laugh about it, but it's true. We all do it. Jeffrey Yost has it perfectly said. This is Belichick's genius. If I could sum up Belichick in one thing, it's this quote right here. Belichick never assumes the plan's going to go. Football is a game of one thing that happens. The first quarter is about assessment. Do we plan this accordingly? Are we on the right course? The second and the third quarter is about adjustments. The fourth quarter is a standalone game. How do you assess your business? We all want to be happy and positive, but when you take the Jeffrey Yash approach, you understand that things could go wrong because the secret to all victory lies in the organization of the non-obvious. That's how you impact the culture. This play will sum up everything that I've talked about today. This play has every element of what I discussed today. Super Bowl 49. 110 million people watching. Seattle Seahawks versus New England Patriots. Glendale, Arizona. 24 seconds left to go in the game. Yours truly is in the press box screaming for Belichick to call timeout. Call timeout, Bill. We got to save Tom some time. Basically giving away the score. Belichick ignores the noise, focuses on the other sideline. He sees Pete Carroll's team look a little disorganized. Doesn't want to call timeout to give them more time to figure it out. Right? What people don't know about this play is back in March, Belichick told the defensive coaches, I want to play goal line defense. I want to play a goal line defense with 3 corners on the field. 3 corners, take our best player, Devin McCourty, off the field. Command of self, command of trust. No ego involved. Devin McCourty comes off the field. Number 23 there, 21, Malcolm Butler, goes on the field. Now, Malcolm Butler's only playing because the other guy who plays that position got benched at halftime. So what happens to when we put it in? Belichick says, I want you to put that defense in. We'll call it goal line nickel. We practice it all of May in our OTA days. We practice it at minicamp. We practice it in September. We practice it in training camp. Every Friday during the regular season, we practiced it. Because that's when we practice goal line. In January, we got to the playoffs. We practiced it every Thursday and Friday because that's when you do it in the playoffs. The first time we ever called the defense was right now. The very first time. The biggest stage, the biggest game, the biggest moment, we put a defense on the field that we had never run before in our entire year. Confidence without evidence. We go out there. 2 days before, on Friday, we ran this exact play. You know what happened? Malcolm gave up a touchdown. You see the guy but where Malcolm, you see the arrow? That's Brandon Browner. On Friday's practice, he didn't jam a receiver. We corrected him. He jams the receiver. Malcolm knows the ball's going inside. He beats the receiver to the spot. We win Super Bowl 49. Everybody blames Pete Carroll for having a bad call. Annie Duke, who wrote a great book. She wrote a great book, opened her book about this. It's this exact play. We had more players in our front to block, and if they would have run the ball, they wouldn't have gained any yards. But this play is the essence of everything we talked about. It's the essence of leadership. It's the essence of trust in the process. It's the essence of confidence without evidence. Everything we believed in is in this play. And that's how 1 + 1 = 3. Because when you get people believing something bigger than themselves, you get that. The Daily Coach. Let me tell you the great story before I close about the great George Raveling. George Raveling is a basketball coach. He played at Villanova University in Philadelphia. Gets done playing basketball, and he decides he wants to go become a coach. So he's going to become a graduate assistant right there at Villanova. 1963, goes and sees his buddies, friends down in Wilmington, Delaware. He and his buddy go down to the house, and the father says to the sons, he says, you guys going to go to Washington tomorrow? And they said, no, we don't have any money, we don't have a car. The father says to both these kids and his son, I think you should go down there. It's going to be really important for an African-American kid to go see this march on Washington. I'll give you money and I'll give you the car. So the two of them go down, they get in the car, they get a hotel on the outskirts of town. Early in the morning, they come over and they start walking around. and they get approached to be security guards. 50 cents an hour, 1963, pretty good deal. So there's George Raveling, all 6'7" of them up on the stage as Dr. King is going to give his speech. Dr. King was one of 16 speakers that day. One of 16. They only had 10 minutes to give their speech. Mahalia Jackson, the gospel singer, she's in the back of the stage. She had heard Dr. King give the I Have a Dream speech 2 weeks earlier in Detroit. Well, Dr. King isn't giving the I Have a Dream speech that day. He's not. He's reading another speech. She screams to him, Dr. King, tell him about the dream. He then launches into the I Have a Dream speech. The place goes berserk. George Raveling's on the stage. Here comes Dr. King. George Raveling says to Dr. King, can I have a copy of that speech? He folds it up and gives it to him. He's owned the speech up until 3 years ago when he gave it to Villanova University. It was never a title, I Have a Dream. But that's a divergent thought by George Raveling. That's kind of who I share the Daily Coach with. The Daily Coach is inspired by Bill Campbell to let you know about coaching, to help you coach, and help you present to your people every single day. It's our job to make people better. It's our job to bring out the best in people. And leadership is really about who do we make better? It isn't about us. So thank you very much.